This week the Torah teaches us the blessings that the priests would give to the people. What does it mean when a human being speaks? What's really happening? Physically, trillions of things are happening. Human speech requires the highest amount of energy from the brain out of all the things that we do. The brain is correlating data, spanning decades, and creating content, bringing it all together, moving different parts of the face, putting pressure out from the lungs, directing the back of the throat, moving the tongue at unimaginable speeds. And there it is, speech, the physical aspect. Internally, all the organs are involved. Everyone's doing their part. It's a dance. It's a dance. The organs perform flawlessly, for the most part. If we're under the influence of certain things, then we can suddenly see how the speech changes because the brain can't keep up with the demands of what it takes to talk. It's quite intense. But that's just the external layer, that's just the shell. That tells us nothing about the real power and the real meaning of our capacity to make noise. When we communicate, we're exporting a reality from within our consciousness, and those who are listening are importing. This reality is a world. It's an experience. It's an expression of the life force itself. And so internally, we're directing the emotions, we're directing mental activity, and we're directing spiritual direction and beliefs. And so every sound, every noise, everything that comes in through our air canal is creating a reality inside of us. This reality is a reaction from within our being. This reaction is triggered by a natural response and is viewed through a lens of all the associations we've created that relate to this particular sound, to this particular noise. So we're activating all these angels, we're activating all these associations stored deep within our memory simply by listening to a noise. When we speak, we're activating formulas relating to our original language that we recorded at the first few years of our life. Every letter, every sound that we make, we once learned how to make. There was a specific place, there was a specific time, there was a specific smell. We were feeling something, we were experiencing. Every time we activate that letter, we activate all the experiences that relate to that letter. And so essentially, the soul, the human soul that gives meaning and interpretation and directs everything that's happening on this planet, is built and created from letters. These letters are closer to the soul than the body that contains it, because these letters will leave with the soul while the body will remain here. And so to give blessing is to direct the human nervous system towards a specific type of manifestation. A curse is a manifestation of the human nervous system in a specific way, in a specific direction. And so in order to give life to this soul, to the nefesh hamedaberes, to the soul that speaks, we had to make speech become the source of our security, because safety, security is the first priority within the organism. So if the human being is going to live in conditions where anything else is more important to it than the words, then it's going to see life from the perspective of a lower being. It's not going to see life from the perspective of the medaber, of the nefesh that speaks. It's going to get lost in the world of the senses where it perceives its own fulfillment. But it will not be fulfilled from that world because it doesn't dwell in that world. It belongs in the world of letters, in the world of speech, in the world of concept. Concept is the food of the soul while it lives in the body. Because concept is guiding the soul so that it can develop itself to eventually realize its own nature. So the soul needs to develop, just like the body needs to develop. And in order to develop, it needs words, letters. And the more those letters are going to mean to it, the more their importance is going to rise above all the other needs and all the other desires that the world of the senses provides. And then, when it develops this most important of souls, the highest soul, the soul that is in charge of concept, only then can it properly enjoy the world of the senses. The world of the senses, from a human perspective, was designed for those who are mature in their speech. Being mature in their speech means that they've recognized the nature of how to use speech. They recognize the effect of speech upon the human soul, on the human interaction with life. Every reality that was shared amongst humans from the time that humans learned how to speak was designed by speech. Speech would create the underlying understandings upon which communities and societies were built. And speech is an expression of the human heart. The brain organizes the information, but it's the will of the heart that's directing the brain how to organize the information. And so essentially, a blessing is assistance to the human heart. A curse is reducing the desire of the human heart to continue living on this planet, in whatever form it might come. And so this is why Hashem says to Avraham Avinu, the attribute of kindness, those who bless you will be blessed, and those who curse you will be cursed. Those who bless the attribute of kindness are blessed because their heart finds more reason to want to live. And those who curse the attribute of kindness are removing their own desire from life. And so the essence of a blessing is to bring forth life from the source of life. The source of life that is giving you life. The source of life that dwells in the unity that's giving life to your heart. So from that source will come forward more life when the heart is blessed. And from that source will come forward less life when the heart is cursed. Now, who creates the blessing and the curse? We do. So who is regulating how much life we receive? We regulate. The power of the priests was to remember that we regulate. That's what they were in charge of. They were meant to give over the secrets from generation to generation so that humanity remembers how to regulate life so that they don't lose access to life, like we have, unfortunately. Now we have to find a well to rediscover our connection to what's rightfully ours. It's nobody else's, it's life itself. It's life that was given to us by the very one who decided that life should exist. And so as the soul that lives on words starts to mature, it can become very frightened, because the words that most people say to each other don't add up to anything. The beliefs are just being repeated. The different understandings of life are not based on any deep roots, are not really essentially true. And so when the speaking soul wakes up and tries to make sense of the concepts that are now so important to it, it's in a crisis. The world of concept is not in order. And this is because the priests have not been keeping track of reality. The priests themselves, the leaders themselves, have lost track of reality. Humanity has gone into the world of illusion together, as a society, as a civilization. The ancient tribes are more connected to reality than civilization. Not that they understand the depth of what they're interacting with, but they have some respect for it. Civilization has lost all respect for nature. Civilization is violating their own health. They're violating every single understanding that a human being would naturally have by their behaviors. Behaviors that don't recognize the power of speech at all. Speech is used loosely and freely, as if it had no meaning, as if it had no consequence, as if the spirit is not listening. And so when the spirit awakens and needs to make sense of the world of concept so that it has a dwelling place, so that it can reside within reality in comfort and in peace, it requires protection, it requires guidance, it requires direction. And this is why we have the Torah. This is why we have teachings. Teachings for the human soul. This is the real nature of the Torah. The real nature of the Torah, which is the secret of the Torah, the secret meaning, speaks directly to the soul that's created with letters. The external peel that protects this wisdom speaks directly to the imagination, to the animal spirit. And that part of the Torah, that interpretation, is individual to each one. It's not real, because we can't really include all the different aspects and all the different sides of what's being said into one concept, but we experience it through our imagination, and this creates the desire within the imagination to figure out what is really going on, so that the soul that speaks can wake up, so that everything that the senses are presenting seem like child's play next to what the Torah is describing. So the Torah is appealing to the soul, to the nefesh hamendaberes, to the part in us that can perceive the truth that we are creating reality. The truth that we came to a situation, came into a world that's an absolute mess. But we are still the ones who are creating the reaction to that mess. The goal of the blessings, the ultimate blessing, was when the high priest would bless the nation on the holiest day of the year. And that blessing, as long as the first temple was around, was made with the name of the source, the name of the power, the intelligence, the force that decides our destiny, that's giving life to us in every single moment. That name was pronounced and its meaning became obvious to all those who were present. And that's the source of all blessing. All blessing is simply more access to what you already have. You're already that. But how much of that do you appreciate? How much of that do you know? How much of that can you contain? That's where the development is required. And the throne for that life force is the soul that speaks. A soul that speaks, that's properly developed, is a perfect throne where the revelation of that life force can reside. If the world of concept is not in order, that life force cannot reside in such an entity because there are too many enemies. Enemies are the illusions of conflict. So only when the world of concept is in order, the world of concept is developed, the world of concept is based on reality, can the deepest realizations of self be perceived by that world of concept that is prepared for it. We all interact with people on a daily basis. We all talk. We talk way too much, but we do it anyway. So now is the time to realize the power we have within our mouth. Look at the faces of the people that you're interacting with and see if you can tell if interacting with you was a blessing or a curse? What are we creating within humanity? What we're creating within humanity, that's what will be. This is more real than anything that happens on the physical level, because this is eternal. This part, even though it's invisible, lasts forever. It affects the entire future. How many times was the destiny of a very important man or woman shaped by a statement that they heard in childhood? How many times was the development of a child ruined or slowed because of a statement? Because something someone said to them. What we bring into reality, we will have. And that's all we'll have. What we don't bring into reality, we should not expect to have. It won't be there. And so today, in this world, we're all priests. We're all Kohanim. We're all trying to serve the entity that created us to bring kindness into this world. Those who bless kindness will receive blessing. And so we are here to bring blessing. Whenever we use our lips, there should be an awareness of what kind of blessing are we creating. Because this is the nature of that soul. This is the nature of your soul. This is the first dress that your soul manifests in, is letters and words. From that infinite unity come forth letters. From the letters come forth thoughts, speech, action, the entire reality. So may we all find a way to become more aware of our speech, to become more aware of the effect we are having on the souls that contain the light of humanity. And may we ourselves be blessed from within, so that our heart is constantly seeing kindness, seeing joy, singing about the wonders of life, bringing to itself and to its surroundings the blessings that we were designed to experience. And may all of humanity wake up to realize their power and to use it in a way that's good for them, in a way that will help them, in a way that will make them feel extremely good. Because this is what it was designed to be. We weren't designed to badmouth each other. That's not why we have a mouth. So we should simply wake up to our nature. It's already ours. We already have it. We should learn how to use it appropriately. And that, within itself, is the redemption that we're waiting for. Because once we use our speech properly, it's only a short matter of time before we will understand life a lot more deeply. And we will want it. And therefore we will learn it. And we will discover it. And it will become us. And we will become it. And that will be the end of our suffering. May it happen soon.
Wow. Amen.
Any questions? Yes.
If the imagination comes from nefesh habahamis, does that mean that things have their will?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's what's guiding them, is that they imagine. In fact,
It's not their intuition.
the intuition comes through the imagination in order to manifest action, because the intuition itself is just information. It cannot make a decision and a movement. So when we move, for example, any of our limbs, we need the capacity to imagine that limb and to imagine the movement in order to instruct the physical entity, in order to create the nerve movements. So of course, monkeys can imagine. Monkeys are very good at imagining. They're better than us at imagining in certain ways. And when we're still imagining, we're considered to be like monkeys. Because if the Dibur is not in charge, that's monkey behavior.
We imagine. I mean, our imagination is that intuition.
Our imagination is already mixed with the intelligence of speech. So even before the intelligence of speech is dominating the being, it is already involved in our process, and it's already making the intelligence, the imagination much more intelligent than the monkey's imagination. But the goal is that the speech should be in charge. And that's different. For most of us, as long as we're pursuing the senses, the imagination is in charge. We're just using the speech to serve the imagination. And the goal is the opposite, that the speech becomes in charge. That's the nefesh hamdabez, that's the higher level soul. And it guides the imagination to imagine only what's healthy for it and for humanity. So that's the end of suffering, because the intelligence will never hurt itself. It's only the imagination that hurts itself.
You said that nature is just the expression of nature, but it is Hashem's will.
A human being is like a small world. So just like in a human being, the will is directing the nature, so too in the bigger world, the will is directing the nature. However, it was the will of the one who created nature that his will be filtered through our will before it affects the entire cosmos. So therefore, when they get life, they get it through us. Our energy is the one that's directing everything ultimately. The stars and the planets, and the earth and the sun and the animals, of course.
Our will.
Everything through our will. Yeah, the animals behave based on how we're behaving. And this is obvious. If somebody owns a pet, yeah, there's different. They pick up on our moods and on our feelings, and because the human is directing his own path, the animal is copying an order that it has to conform with. So automatically, the human is directing and the animal is following. That's the nature. But all of them are affected. Over there, it's an interaction that you can observe. But even when you can't observe it because the nature doesn't make them friendly, it's still happening. And if we're agitated, the animals will be agitated. And this used to be a lot more obvious when people used to live in small communities together with the animals. So that when people were nervous because there was a war or anything else going on, the animals weren't having children. There was no eggs, there was less milk. So you sort of saw how the curse of conflict is coming through all the way to the planet, and even the fruits and vegetables, because they were growing so close to the community, we could see the effect of the human moods on everything that's happening around it. So because we're so segregated, yeah, if you look at a brick wall, it's going to look pretty much the same. So we don't realize how much we are the life of nature. The way that we interact, the way that we live, the way that we speak to each other is causing the animals to have an experience. That's one way or the other. And of course, the most important animals is getting affected, which is us. in order to interact with our nerves and tell ourselves, where am I and what am I? And is it worth being me? Am I lucky that I am me, or did I, you know what I mean? So all these thoughts are intrinsic when we interact with life, but they're really affecting us in a very deep way. They're deciding how much life you're going to get. How much do you really want to be here? That's how much you're going to get. And that's the total of all your relationships and all your interactions and all your circumstances. Based on that, you come to life and you say, today I really, really want to live. Okay, you get tons of energy. Today I'm not so sure. All right, so then you get less. So we can make that for each other. If we're aware, if we're all on the level of medaber, we can help each other very nicely. But if we're all busy fulfilling our senses, we're competing with each other over the same resources. We don't realize that we get to create whatever we want out of nothing, out of thin air, literally.
So how does that come in, the whole concept of kabbalah in the different languages? Because it's very clear that the different languages have a different consciousness.
Yes. This was segregating the consciousness of humanity to make humanity smaller. This was the beginning of making humanity small and manageable so that they can realize the folly of their ways, because they were way too powerful before. So now there was confusion. The human soul didn't anymore understand. He's talking differently than me. I know that he's saying stuff because he's making noise, but I don't know what he's saying. Maybe he knows stuff that I don't know. So now there's a lot less confidence. There's a lot less security.
Isn't that a good thing? Because then we learn a little bit on Elba and saying, like, okay, this society, this culture, this language has a different sugang, a different perspective,
right,
that I don't have, and yeah, I should go learn it and I should understand it. But instead, what it seems to do is segregate us and separate us, which is the antithesis of really what
it's segregating us in order to make us small. We're assuming humanity is clean of evil spirits, and then yes, they would be curious about the different culture and want to discover. But humanity was filled with evil spirits. People were not getting along very nicely. And this was some type of a race where all the different nations are now going to compete who's better than who. It wasn't about learning from one another. And every single one of them is an animalistic interpretation. It's not the real, it's not the dibur, it's not the nefesh ha'medaberes that made that culture. So this is why every other language other than Lashon HaKodesh is called a Lashon of Tuma, which means that there's an unconscious spirit speaking it by default, because that language cannot awaken the real spirit. It doesn't have the capacity to do so. Because we don't have prophecy. Prophecy is the full awakening of the human spirit. Then you can speak to the one above directly, because he has a representative on earth. That's the human spirit. Only when the human spirit is conscious. If only the monkey spirit is conscious, then we cannot speak to the owner. The owner is gone. The owner doesn't like what we're doing. He's not here. So when we're mature enough, we have prophecy. When we have prophecy, we know what he wants because we have a line of communication to the intelligence that created us.
So that means, though, if I think my mom wants to push, that I don't have that capacity to ever come in contact Hashem the way I can.
That's true. But we don't have that as long as we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, we don't have a Efer HaPorah, we have a lot of other things. But the more you prepare your imagination to receive from the life force, the more you're going to receive. And you get to keep that. You get to realize that. So it's not a yes or no question. Since the Galus, it's just how far can you go? And whatever you get to keep. But of course, until the times of Mashiach, we're not going to be fully awake, nor do we really want to, in a certain sense, because it would be extremely painful. If the Gula is not there and somebody's fully awake, it's not pleasant. There's a reason why the Shekhinah doesn't want to live in the exile. Having Hashem is a Gula, but for a lot of people, that realization came at the moment they left the body, because that's the only time they really wanted to feel it fully. Because being in that state, we see this in the Midbar, being in that state meant that when they didn't follow the path exactly, or where something inside of them was offended, people died by the thousands. they were so alive, they so understood what's happening to them, that when something went wrong, they couldn't handle it. The body wasn't designed to handle it. The catastrophe was bigger than what the nervous system can digest. So to be big and to be realized is good, yes, but that requires an environment. It's like a luscious tree that's in the middle of a desert where there's no water. It's just not going to last. It's not meant to last. There's a certain type of environment that can feed this type of being. That environment was Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh when it was built, and the Chachamim were there, and they created an environment for it. In this environment, it cannot. A lot of big people, they passed away in their 30s. The world couldn't contain them. So it's not just about yes or no. Am I there or am I not there? It's about how far can you go? How intelligent are you to understand the importance? And this test of intelligence is the ultimate test of life, because intelligence and life are indistinguishable. It's the same thing. The intelligence created life and he lives. And he wants us to be intelligent like him. So this is going to happen one way or the other. This is why we're here. He doesn't miss. But we have the option of how fast we want to go to where we're going to go anyway. And that requires devotion. It requires realization. It requires a level of intelligence. This is why the pasuk says, "Yoav chachma lechakim," and he gives wisdom to those who are wise. Meaning, they had to be wise before in order to get the wisdom. But like the other pasuk, it says, "Belev kol chacham lev nasati chachma." In the hearts of those who have a smart heart, I give wisdom. Meaning that wisdom is the tool for wisdom, because the more you recognize, the more you're intelligent, the more you realize how much you want this, and you go for it, and it's yours, and you should go for it, and you should get as much as you can. But ultimately, prophecy is only through Lashon HaKodesh, and it's not the Lashon HaKodesh that we're used to. These words have a completely, different dimension to them once the secrets are accessed, and the letters themselves are really the tools to realize the Holy Spirit. So the letters themselves are what give us access to the holy language. As long as one doesn't know the letters, he cannot know the language. So it's not simply about having your Hebrew as your mother tongue. That's not really going to help you in this case.
So what you're saying, what will help is figuring out life.
Discovering the nature of self will help, because then you gain intelligence, and then you can learn. There were people who learned all 70 languages in one night, like Yosef, from an angel that's currently inside of you. Otherwise, you wouldn't exist. But he found a way to communicate with that angel. So things are possible in a miraculous way when we're doing things right and heading down the proper path and developing what's really ours. As long as we're hallucinating and using the imagination to try to figure out how to make our lives better, then we're not gaining access to this real source, and therefore we keep failing. Every society that was built on anything but this source of life is going to fail. It has to fail. It's not who we are. The Nefesh HaMedaberes will live, because this is what we were designed to be. We're not going to stay monkeys. So it's only a matter of developing what needs to be developed so that we can be what we were meant to be, because we're already that, so we might as well have it. And it's nice, and what we have is not nice. So it's a no-brainer. Literally, you can only turn off your brain.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
First of all, thank you. Second of all, some of what you're saying resonates on a self-evident level for me.
Most of them. But
some of what you're teaching is hard for me to understand. If somebody could, and it could be that you're there, right? I'm not doubting. It's hard for me to relate to statements like the world is impacted at a cosmic level by the decisions we make. I totally, can follow the logic there, but it's hard, it doesn't seem like that's something that the general public has kind of realized, or maybe that's something that's hard to prove out, or science hasn't gotten there yet, or some of the other things that you're saying too, like the idea of just language itself being that powerful, and coming from the language of Lashon HaKodesh being sort of the portal to getting to these places. How would one go about making these things more self-evident, or do you recommend that there some things that just won't be self-evident? You kind of have to take them. I know you've talked about faith in the past and not needing to take things on faith or dogma. I'm just very wary of anything that's dogmatic, and I'm just wondering how you would advise approaching subject matter that seems on the surface to be dogmatic, given it's hard to, just kind of, maybe it's where I'm at, right? Maybe it's where I'm coming from. It's hard to see these things as self-evident. I'm not sure if that was clear.
Can you summarize again?
Yeah, just very briefly, some of the things that you're saying that might, to the layman like myself, seem more dogmatic in nature, such as Lashon HaKodesh having a certain power, or certain, somebody being able to learn 70 languages all at once.
So I'll explain to you.
Yeah.
When we say that Lashon HaKodesh has certain power, it's not a dogmatic statement at all. What we're saying is that the ancient people, while they still understood the nature of life and they were creating language in the first place, they had a certain intention of what language is and how it should be used. And there are ways of using language that are manipulative, that take us into the world of illusion, take us away from reality. And this is where we are today, where people are living in their own illusions. There's no truth. And that's because of the languages and the nature of what language does to the mind. Language can make the mind hallucinate, just like it's doing now in a certain sense. And so the holy language is speaking about understanding the 22 codes, which are the letters, and the 10 vowels, which was the ancient secret of how the human being functions, how we are related to the cosmos, how the different powers interact. And from there, to understand the nature of language and what it's supposed to serve. So there's a wisdom here. It's not about a dogma of this one is superior to that one. It's about a certain knowledge that they had, that they passed on through the language specifically. So this language contains within it something that was specifically designed to transfer the wisdom from one generation to the next. And this has been forgotten. So that's why I said today, when people speak this language, they're not accessing the wisdom. So this is not what it means. It doesn't mean simply using those words. It means understanding the secret of language.
Is that something that can be reverse engineered? If it's forgotten, how do we get it back?
We have the books, and our soul knows it. So those two have to meet. When we have the words that are given over from the ancient wise men, understood by our soul, then that opens the secret. And that means that we have to gain access to our soul first. And so the teachings were also designed to develop the brain and to develop the heart. But that requires a qualified teacher that knows how to apply these methods. And even today, people are teaching and applying the methods that they understand to develop the brain and to develop the heart, but we're not creating prophets, which means we're not aligned with the truth.
Can reading Tehillim be one of the ways?
Definitely. Reading Tehillim was specifically designed for this purpose. And the reason it's such a great tool is because it's working on the emotions while it's also speaking the language of the wisdom, describing different body parts that are being impacted by the events, and describing this tremendous amount of wisdom hidden between just the songs and the different emotions that he's going through. So King David was an expert at emotions, and the entire Tehillim was written for this purpose, so that human beings can discover their own emotions and discover their natural reactions to life. These Psalms were written through the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit revealed itself to King David in order to be able to write these beautiful poems that touch us in the deepest ways, everybody according to their own level of development.
And the more you read it,
it becomes more real, of course. It creates a spirit inside of you. But the idea is to keep the heart involved. So if it's just saying the letters, making the sounds, that's not the goal. As long as the heart is creating the emotion, then we're creating the right spirits.